Today we will be starting Chapter 2, which focuses on linear equations. We are going to add in an extra section before the book actually picks up. So this is going to be section 2.0, and it is going to be talking all about slope, which is going to be a very important concept that we're going to use for all of our linear equations in Chapter 2. So by the end of the lesson, you will be able to calculate slope and find missing values from ordered pairs using the slope formula. So to begin, our vocab for the day is slope. Slope is the ratio of change in the x-coordinates compared to the y-coordinates. When you see slope written in equations, you're generally going to see it as the letter m. So the letter m, the lowercase m, stands for slope in a lot of our equations from this section. Another way to think about slope is the rise over the run. So if you're looking on the graph, the rise would be how far up or down you're going, and the run would be how far left or right you're going. This is another way to say change in y, how far up or down, or change in x, how far across. The actual formula that we're going to use is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Those little numbers at the bottom just tell us which point we are using. So for example, if I have 0.12 and 0.34, the first x value, or the first x coordinate in the problem, is 1. So I would label this as x1 because it's the first x value. 2 is the first y value. Of the first xy pair, 1 is x, 2 is y. In the second xy pair, 3 is x, and 4 is y. So we use those little subscripts to differentiate between which number is part of which ordered pair. There are 4 different types of slopes that you will see. A positive slope is trending up from the left of the graph to the right of the graph. A negative slope is trending down from the left of the graph to the right of the graph. When we have a slope of 0, we have a horizontal line somewhere on the graph. And when we have an undefined slope, we have a vertical line somewhere on the graph. One thing that might help you remember which slope is which is something Ms. Johnson and I like to call Mr. Slope Guy. This right here is a positive slope. It's trending up. The second one, trending down, is a negative slope. Our up and down, our vertical line, is an undefined slope, so that's a U right there. And then our horizontal slope is our 0 slope. As you can kind of see, it makes a face. It's a cute little picture to help you remember what the slopes look like. So the first thing we're going to do today is find a slope when we are given a graph. When you do this, you want to look for 2 points. In this case, the 2 points are highlighted. They may not always be highlighted for you, so when you're looking for points, go to points that have exact intersections on the graph. So you want to make sure you're looking for those exact intersections. When you are using a graph to find slope, all you need to be able to do is count. So you start at the first point, and in this case, we're going down 3, and to the right, 1. You could also start at the bottom point, which would give you going up 3 and to the left 1. So it doesn't matter if that negative is on the top or the bottom. Either way, this is a negative slope. It's trending down at a 3-to-1 ratio. So you could pick any 2 points on this line, and it would give you that same slope. Go ahead and try this one on your own. When we do this, we're counting up 2 and over 4, or down 2 and left 4. Either way, it's going to reduce to 1/2. Another thing we can do without the graph is find the slope of the line between 2 points using our formula. If you remember from that first slide, the formula said y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to go ahead and label my points, x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to take my first point, which is y2 in the formula, and subtract y1 over y2 minus y1. In this case, my double negative makes it a positive, so I end up with a slope of 3 over 5. What if I were to switch to the points? Well, if I make this x2 and y2 and x1 and y1, I'm going to start with 0 minus 3 over negative 3 minus 2. This is going to give me negative 3 over negative 5, which reduces to 3 over 5. So ultimately, it doesn't matter which point you label y1 and y2 and x1 and x2, as long as you are consistent. The points have to come, or those values have to be from the same point. So x1, y1 has to be the same point, x2, y2 has to be from the same point. Doesn't matter what order you label them, as long as you're consistent. Go ahead and try this one on your own. When I subtract, I end up with 5 over negative 10, which is going to reduce to negative 1/2. Couple other examples I want to go through really quick. On this first one, we've got negative 3, 1, and 2, negative 1. So if I label x1, y1, x2, y2, and plug into my formula, I get negative 1 minus negative 1 over 2 minus negative 3. Again, double negatives become a positive, so I end up with 0 over 5, which gives me a slope of 0. So if you see a pair of points and you notice that your y coordinates are the same, you're going to end up with a slope of 0 because you're going to have 0 in your numerator. If we switch over to the second one and label them x1, y1, x2, y2, and set those up in our problem, where we go y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, double negatives make a positive, we end up with 6 over 0. As we've learned in previous classes, we cannot divide by 0, so this is what we call an undefined slope. So when we end up with 0 on the bottom, or in that denominator, we have an undefined slope. This occurs when your x values match. So if you notice that your y values match, you can automatically know that the slope is 0. If you notice that your x values match, you automatically know that the slope is undefined. The last thing we're going to talk about today is how to use the slope to find a missing coordinate from an ordered pair. We want to set up using our slope equation, which again was y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So even though we're missing one of the values, we still want to label x1, y1, x2, y2, and plug those values into our formula. So y2 is n minus y1 is 7 over x2 is 1 minus 7. Now, we can simplify this to say that n minus 7 is over negative 6. This is where our slope value now comes into play. We're going to set this fraction equal to our slope, which is 5/3. In order to solve this problem now, we're going to go ahead and cross multiply. So I've got 3 times n, which is 3n, minus 3 times 7, which is 21, and then cross multiplying the other direction, negative 6 times 5 is negative 30. Now we're just solving an equation using our sad meat steps. The first thing we're going to do is get rid of minus 21 by adding 21. When I do negative 30 plus 21, I end up with negative 9. We're going to finish with dividing by 3 on both sides of the equation, and we find out that n is equal to negative 3. So that missing point in our value was 1, negative 3. So you set up your slope equation, set it equal to the slope, use cross multiplication to set up an equation, and solve for that missing value. Go ahead and try this one on your own. Again, set up our slope, simplify it, set up our cross multiplication, and we end up with an answer of 17. So that ordered pair would be 17, 5. If you have questions about this or anything else from the lesson, please let me know when you get to class.